Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I think it's been about 2 years since I actually released a new video on this, but don't you worry, I've come back with a new series covering the essential concepts of computer science that someone needs to know when they're building with AI, aka vibe coding. Now, if you're a computer science professional, you might find that some of the concepts that I'm talking about here may be oversimplified, but this course is not for you. If you're someone who's building with AI or is trying to build with AI and you constantly give prompts like, make this work, this course is exactly for you. I'm just going to walk you through the core computer science concepts that you need to know, which is going to make vibe coding with AI 10x much faster. That's the objective of this series, and without further ado, let's get into the first lesson, which is to read code. Now, these are the only programming concepts you need to know to be able to read AI generated code successfully. It's just 6 building blocks. 6 building blocks, and that's all that is to know. I mean, just think about it, right? AI models like Claude Opus 4.6 or Gemini 3 or OpenAI Codex, all of these are great at generating lines and lines of code. But you need to understand what it's actually doing so you know what is happening and you can guide the AI better to fix it. It looks exactly like English, but you can't understand what it actually is doing. But if you look closely, there are only 6 core concepts in here repeated over and over again. Number 1, variables. Now think of variables as a named container. You take an empty box and you put a label on top of it. That's what a variable is. These variables can contain any kind of data. In real life, we take a random string of 10 numbers and we save it on our phone contact book as mom or whoever it is, right? It's very similar to that. In code, we just say, let user equal to Ash. That's it, as simple as that. You take one data point and you define it as a variable. This variable can have any other data points, as we will see. Now, once you understand what variables are, the next thing to know is that variables come in different flavors, which is what we call as the types. In programming, all you need to know is just 5 core types, and about 90% of your use case would be sorted. Now, these types are string, which is a string of characters typically used for words, letters, sentences, things like that. And then you have numbers, and then you have boolean, which is something that can take either the values true or false. You have array, which is a collection of elements, and then you have objects, which is a key value pair. Now think about it, right? When you're filling forms, you say name, your name, email address, your email address, phone number, your phone number. Think about these as the objects. These 5 types cover almost 90% of the data that you see in code. Next up, we have functions, which is basically reusable blocks where you put in one input and you take an output. These are functions. Now, for example, you might have different food items. Each of those food items cost differently. You just need to calculate the sum of all of them. The function is to calculate that sum, the sum of all the prices of the food items. That is going input. Input in, the output is the total cost of all the food items that you've added into the function. Now, computers don't think, no matter how much these LLM companies try to convince you by saying thinking, articulating, formulating, blah, 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 any of these fancy words, computers don't think. They are very deterministic by nature. And what that means is they think in branches. If something happens, do this. Else, do this. That's the if-else block of your code. The program, when it is going through a flow, it stops to check if the user is logged in. Then if the user is logged in, if the condition for this returns true, then it is going to show the dashboard. Or if the user is not logged in, it is going to show the login screen. This is the simple representation, diagrammatic representation of how this looks like. And in code, it looks something like this. If logged in is true, then show dashboard, else show login screen. As simple as that. Now we come to one interesting concept which you are going to use more and more when you start building with AI, which is loops. Now loops is to do something repeatably until it reaches the end of the list or it meets a condition. So imagine you have a list of 1,000 different product items. Each of these products have their own product description, category, cost, and whatnot. Now you want to create a function that sums up the total of all the products that belong to a certain category. Say for example, fashion. Let's take that as a broad example. Now you have a list of 1,000 items of which the program has to go one by one and see if that category of that item is fashion. If yes, it will move to the next step. If not, it will ignore and move to the next item. So like this, on a data set of 1,000 different items that you have, your program can go one by one, loop through it, and checks if the category matches. If yes, then it goes and reads the price, calculates it, and then goes back to the next item on the list. If the next item doesn't belong to the category, it terminates right there and go to the next item. This is basically what loops are, and loops are really great at processing lists and huge amounts of data that you have. Next, you have arrays and objects that are together. Most of your practical data that you're going to be handling with APIs is going to come in the form of arrays and objects. When you make an API call, don't worry about it. We'll come back to all of these concepts later in this course. But for instance, you ask for a piece of data to a database. Now the database sends you a response. What you ask is called the request, and what the database sends is called the response. This response is typically of the format wherein you have an array of different objects. Each object is one complete unit of data. Say for example, you are querying a database filled with identity information. Now it has identity information about myself, my sister, my mom, and my dad. The response that you would receive at the end of it is going to be name Ashwath, age XYZ, gender XYZ. Now this 3 key value pairs constitute one object. Similarly, I'll have multiple objects, one for my sister, one for my mom, one for my dad, and a collection of all of these is going to be an array that you're going to receive as a response on your application, which you can again parse, display however you want to display it, make calculations, make changes, whatever you want to do with it. But the data flows through code in terms of arrays, which is a collection of objects. And that's it. With vibe coding and with AI native building, you don't need to write code. By writing code, I manually mean typing the code into the IDE. But at the same time, you do need to know how you can read code so that you can understand whatever the AI is generating, and you can give feedback that accelerates the development process instead of just randomly asking the AI to fix it. As you can see here, I have an annotated AI output where I'm trying to show you what a variable looks like and how that can be mapped to the function. So constant users is linked to a function. We'll come back to what that word await means in later part of the course. But for now, understand that you can declare a function to a variable as well. Then you go into a if-else loop. You define an if statement, add a condition saying if the user's length is more than 0, which means there is more than one user in the database. Then you go into a loop. For each of those users that is non-zero, you again go into a different condition where you're logging in the console the name of the user. So what this basic snippet of code is doing is, it is going to declare the variable users that is coming in from a different function, which is fetching the list of users. Once this is done, we can then process the variable users and see if the length of the received list of users is more than 0, meaning users actually exist. Then you go into the first condition, which is starting a loop. And for each of the user who's present inside that particular list that we initially fetched using the fetch users function, it is going to print the name of each user on the console. That's all this code is doing. I didn't write this code, but I can definitely read this. And by the end of this course, you should be able to read this too. So to recap, You have variables, which are named containers for values. You have types, which are string, number, boolean, array, and object. A variable can be any of these type. Then you can have functions, which are input in, input out, which is a reusable recipe that works around these variables. Then you have if-else statements, which take care of the branching logic in your code. And then you have loops, which is going to repeat for each item in a list. When you want to process lists and stacks, loops is very useful. Then you have objects and arrays, which is mostly how you're going to receive data when you're interacting with an API. That's 90% of all the code that you're ever going to see, whether AI is generating it for you or whether a human is writing it for you. Once you understand how to label different parts of the code that is being generated, everything else becomes that much more easier to understand and build on top of. In the next lesson, we are going to see how internet works, what happens when you type something onto your browser and you hit enter, what happens in the server, and how is the server sending that data back to you. That's what we are going to learn in the next lesson. Stay tuned for more.